Starting off the show, we are going to be diving into where the Los Angeles Lakers currently stand after Dan Hurley rejected them from their head coach offer. Hurley came out as the favorite for the position, at least in the eyes of the Lakers organization and their preference. Late last week, Adrian Wojnarowski reported that, and I was sort of skeptical that Hurley would leave the situation that he has going on at UConn for a little bit of a, I wouldn't call it dicey necessarily, but definitely a pressure cooker of a situation with the Lakers, considering where the franchise stands as a whole. Obviously one of the greatest franchises in American sports in general, and the fact that there is a lot of uncertainty with what comes with the position moving forward here as to whether or not LeBron James and Anthony Davis, their star players, are even going to be on the roster in a few years. The Lakers offered him reportedly a 6-year deal worth $70 million, would have made him a top 6 highest paid coach in the NBA. Now, a lot of people are wondering, is that enough money in order to try and sway somebody who is in a great position at the University of Connecticut away from a chance of potentially making history this year? Trying to, repeat in college basketball is one of the most difficult things in sports with the amount of parity. Obviously, the NCAA tournament, the winner go home style of it, but Dan Hurley has already pulled that off, and he's looking to make it 3 in a row this season with another very talented roster that is going to be in stores next year. So that's sitting on the table for him at home. He's going through this contract negotiation after having rumors of both the University of Kentucky and the Los Angeles Lakers interested in him, which means, he is probably due for a big payday himself in Storrs, Connecticut. But the Lakers, from their perspective, definitely a generous offer, 6 years, $70 million, but a lot of people are wondering if that was ever going to be enough for Hurley. And this sort of ties into the fact that Brian Windhorst of ESPN put out an article the other day talking about the fact that we've seen the Lakers have a little bit of a recent history of lowballing some of their head coaching candidates. Both Tyronn Lue and Monty Williams rejected the Lakers for their opening position in 2019. Both of them went on to get paid bigger deals, and obviously, at least on the Monty Williams front, the Lakers are probably feeling a little bit better about themselves that they didn't shovel out all that money to Monty Williams specifically. But ultimately it cost them their top candidates in the past, and it was a conversation as to whether or not this was a recurring thing with the Lakers now. And ultimately, I can see it both ways. It would have taken a lot more than what the Lakers offered in order to pull Hurley out, considering the current opportunities that he had ahead of him. It also would have been very risky to give a coach that has never been at the NBA level, top 2-3 money in the NBA. Again, top 6 alone for somebody who doesn't have NBA experience is pretty generous, but at the same time, that just wasn't going to get it done considering the type of deal that Hurley has going for himself at UConn. So it has just been notable, at least, to see these multiple cases of high-profile coaches turning the Lakers away. And people are asking whether or not the Lakers should be embarrassed. I don't think embarrassment is the right term. I think it's more of a statement on the quality of the job as things currently stand, considering the fact that, like I mentioned, there is a lot of uncertainty surround what the roster configuration is going to look like for the next handful of years. The front office has shown a lack of you could say, patience with a number of their head coaches. They have had 7 head coaches in the last 15 seasons. Whoever they end up hiring this year is going to be their 3rd head coach in 4 seasons, and that's coming off of some stints with Frank Vogel, who was hired after Monty Williams and Tyronn Lue passed up on the job. He helped lead the Lakers to a finals in their first season and was fired just 2 seasons later. Darvin Ham, who obviously has been one of the most sort of teased, you could say, coaches in the NBA in recent history, and I'm not saying it's, not justified by any means, but Darvin Ham did make the Western Conference Finals as a 7 seed with this Lakers team a couple years ago, and in both of their playoff exits, I just think that the Nuggets were objectively a better team. So what was Darvin Ham, and again, not saying he's flawless by any means, but what was he supposed to do to help, outcoach the Lakers to a win over a team that was just much better than them? It's at least something to talk about. So, all of this bakes into the conversation of, well, the Lakers are just in this awkward position right now where there is so much pressure surrounding these coaches, these candidates, and really the risk-reward, obviously the reward is coaching the Los Angeles Lakers, and the merit of that job is why we're having this conversation, but ultimately the current situation and circumstances surrounding the job just aren't all that favorable, where the Cleveland Cavaliers are a job opening on the other end of the NBA, and obviously they still have obstacles to overcome as well, but being in a weaker conference, having, I would say, all in all, more overall talent from their guards, their big men, have some bench pieces, and they have some assets that they can move this offseason to try and configurate themselves into a contender in the weaker Eastern Conference. The Lakers just have so many question marks surrounding them right now, which makes this a much more difficult process than you would imagine for the Los Angeles Lakers of finding somebody who wants to coach their team. So ultimately, the question is, what do they do now? What is next for the Lakers? So some of the options that remain for them, JJ Redick has been a name that has been heavily attached to the Lakers for weeks now. He and James Borrego seem to be sort of on their own tier as things currently stand in terms of likelihood of them being the Lakers' next head coach. Both names have been in this, have had their names in the, conversation the entire offseason. Redick was named in the Shams Charania report of the Lakers zeroing in on him. This was last week before the news about Danny Hurley came out. He said since then that his top priority at the moment is just focusing on calling the NBA Finals, which he's doing on ESPN. But there is also a little bit of speculation of whether or not there is any merit to the idea of Redick and the Lakers being in much contact. Windhorst said that it has been minimal communication between the two parties throughout this process, and especially after all of the publicity of JJ Redick being the front runner and then being upstaged very shortly after that zeroing in article came out, that there are people who believe that he may not want to be viewed as the second option. All of it, again, especially Redick, who would eventually like to have a role in the NBA as a head coach someday, to never have a coaching gig above the youth level, to then hop into the Los Angeles Lakers pressure cooker as the main guy. That's definitely a big ask, so I can understand hesitation really from both sides on that front. James Borrego, I've said that I think that he is the Lakers' best option up to this point. We'll see how that plays out necessarily. Some other names that have been thrown out there as well. Kenny Atkinson, former head coach of the Brooklyn Nets. He was fired just shortly into the stint of Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving in Brooklyn, but had some pretty decent years coaching that team when they were a little bit more middling. That was the D'Angelo Russell All-Star year. Him and Karis LeVert and Spencer Dinwiddie, they made for some pretty fun teams there. So again, another option with experience. And you want to talk about experience, there was a name that was thrown out there of Jay Wright over the weekend, was sort of named as a very dark horse stealth candidate, which would be very interesting. Jay Wright has tons of experience on the coaching front. Now, at the college level is where he has made a name for himself. He coached Villanova from 2001 to 2022 when he decided to retire because of the ongoing development of the college basketball landscape, the NIL era, and the difficulties that are there, but almost introduced him a little bit to more of the transactional manner of the NBA, and we know that he is another, like Hurley, an incredible basketball mind, led Villanova to 2 national championships in 2016 and 18, has worked with NBA caliber talent in the past, helped get a lot out of, all of the Villanova guys that are currently on the New York Knicks, from Jalen Brunson, Dante DiVincenzo, and Josh Hart, Mikal Bridges as well. So it is an interesting name that ultimately I don't think he's coming out of retirement, and seems like he is definitely enjoying himself. He's doing some analysis right now for CBS Sports. He was pretty big during March Madness, providing some really good insight. So I do think that he would be a really good candidate. But again, this is a situation where I think the Lakers would have to really swing big with a massive offer in order to pull him out of retirement. And the recent history has shown that the Lakers aren't necessarily willing to spend quite as big on the head coaching front. But maybe that's what they need to do. Again, I think that they're in this limbo right now with what is a head coach candidate of the Lakers going to inherit. What are the expectations going to be in terms of the windows to succeed in these coming years, where they are a tier below some of these other top teams in the Western Conference, the Dallas Mavericks, Minnesota Timberwolves, Denver Nuggets, etc. Some of the young teams that are going to continue to develop as well, such as the Thunder and the Grizzlies. All of that. Is it going to be championship or bust in the eyes of the front office? And then what does this look like in a post-LeBron era? Because Dan Hurley was offered a 6-year contract. 6 years from now, LeBron James definitively will not be on the Lakers. And Anthony Davis, I'm not sure necessarily. Maybe they do decide to build around him. Maybe they decide to go into a rebuild once LeBron is out. So again, a lot of moving pieces moving forward here, and it's going to be interesting to see whether or not this Lakers front office is able to pitch the idea of the job to some of these top candidates. But let me know in the comments section who you hope the Lakers go after in this head coaching search. But we are going to be taking our first break now, and when we come back on the other side, we're going to dive into some of the drama that's broken out over the past couple days surrounding Caitlin Clark being left off of Team USA for the 2024 Olympics and that women's basketball roster. So we're going to be diving into all of that. Stick with us, and we will be right back after this quick break.